Good afternoon, wrestling fans. How are we all doing today? My name is Jerome Boateng, and welcome back to the BN'N podcast, where you get all your wrestling news and sports news as well. We are back to talk about one of the most important and biggest pay-per-views of the year, Survivor Series 2023. I'm joined by my co-host, Rodney. He is with me in studio. How you doing today, Rodney?
I'm doing well. I'm doing all right. And of course, we got a lot to talk about, including Survivor Series 2003 and the implications it could have, next year heading into WrestleMania.
Yeah, for sure, man. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Noah Russell. Noah, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. Let's get into it.
Yes, for sure, man. We could definitely get into it. And, before we talk about the big news of the day, Noah, just wanted to reference real quick. There's some people trying to say that a one-loss Bama team or a one-loss Oregon team or one-loss Ohio State team should get in the playoff over Florida State. I just want to have your thoughts on that real quick. If Florida State's undefeated, what's going to happen with them in the playoffs? They getting in?
That's kind of what everybody's saying right now. The way that they're leaning is if they beat Louisville this weekend, then they are in. That is the current theory going around. We won't know until next Tuesday when they drop the CFP rankings and then have their full-on show for it. All I can say is for right now, as far as guarantees are concerned, I'd say lock in at least Michigan and Georgia. Michigan's more of a lock-in, although Iowa can do some really weird stuff and have those squirrely moments. Georgia, less so of a lock-in because they're facing Bama in the SEC championship.
Yep, they gotta go up against Kirby's father, and a lot of Georgia fans, they just think because they won that one natty, bro, they just own Alabama. I'm saying y'all ain't never beat Bama for a SEC championship, Rodney. So hey, make no mistake, man. Listen, I know Georgia Tech, that prediction didn't come to fruition, but Alabama ain't coming to play around, and I'm telling you right now. Don't be surprised if you take that L this Saturday.
Well, I think Kirby Smart, he's trying to make history. He's trying to, do something that a lot of college head coaches haven't done, and it's to not just win one national championship, not two national championships, but three national championships, and to do it back to back to back to back to back. And there's not that many head coaches in college football history that's won three straight natties. So Kirby Smart, he's looking to get that. So what he needs to do is take care of business against Alabama in the SEC championship and prevent Alabama from even making the college football playoffs. Because if Alabama wins, they might slip in the college football playoffs if they do beat Georgia for the SEC championship.
Well, hey, Alabama better get in if they get that win against what everybody thinks is the best team in the nation, Georgia. But, enough burying the lead. We're going to get right into it. But if you're listening on ATL Talks Radio and you want to get more BNN podcast content, make sure you listen to the podcast on Spotify. You can access it on Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio, as well as if you're listening on any of those platforms and you want to catch the show live, you can go to atltalks.com to catch the show, as well as going on iHeartRadio, searching ATL Talks and listening to us there as well. So without further ado, man, before we get into the actual meat and potatoes of the pay-per-view, we gotta talk about the big news from the event. CM Punk, after 11 years, has returned to the WWE. He made his surprise return right at the end of the main event of the show, which we'll definitely get into. And it was just, honestly, the logo had already showed on the bottom right, and a lot of folks just assumed, like, hey, man, we got the other return, the return that most people expected, and, when that cult of personality hit, you just knew right then and there. It was just something special. A lot of the fans in Chicago, they serenaded him. They, warmed him. They gave him a very warm welcome, as he deserves in that town, and just really an emotional moment, man. I ain't gonna lie, bro. I don't usually get emotional. I shed a couple tears when CM Punk came back. I can't even lie. When the man like in the front row, when he just held CM Punk like he had known him his whole life and shouted at the camera, "Chicago, Chicago." When he yelled that, bro, I couldn't help it, bro. I couldn't, little tear came down my eye. I was like, that man's really back. But Rodney, Noah, well, first we'll start off with you, Rodney, man. How did you feel just seeing CM Punk make his return?
Man, and if going back to when he first left the company in 2014, after everything that he said about Triple H and Vince McMahon, one of the things that reasons why CM Punk left the WWE in the first place is he didn't get his WrestleMania main event that he really, really wanted. Like, the main things he said was on the podcast that he had with his former best friend Cole Cabana is he always kept going into Vince McMahon's head like, put me in the main event of WrestleMania. Put me in the main event of WrestleMania. He never got it. And another reason that he left is that he had so many injuries and the WWE ignored it and whatnot. And I remember his last match in the WWE in 2014 was the Royal Rumble, and he suffered a concussion. And then he just felt like all the injuries that he suffered, the WWE really didn't care much.
Yeah, like a staph infection too with it, right?
Yeah, which almost killed him. So he felt, and he was still mad at Triple H beating him at a Night of Champions 2011 for people that know wrestling and just need a little history reflection. So it was very surprising that, he was able to come back to WWE, and all those years he talked smack about, Triple H and Vince McMahon, and to even see that picture of Triple H and CM Punk on Instagram shaking hands.
He did the point with Triple H. He did the point with Triple H.
And to see that after all these years, because we all know CM Punk is a type of guy that will hold grudges. As much as I respect CM Punk, it's to this day, it is so surprising that A, he returned to the WWE after all these years, and B, he has an actual picture with Triple H smiling, shaking hands with Triple H, the same guy that he's been talking smack about for the last 9 years.
Yes, sir. And as CM Punk said in his return promo, he's not here to make friends. He's here to make money. And even if he still has some feelings about Triple H, he definitely knows that there's a lot of money to be made with his return. So, Noah, I know you felt a lot of emotions when CM Punk came back, my man. How did you feel just watching him come back at Survivor Series that first time?
I just yelled out of the top of my lungs, yes! I was like, oh man, it was crazy to see that. I was absolutely beside myself. I was chanting along with the crowd over in Chicago, CM Punk, CM Punk, CM Punk. And it was just crazy. On top of an already solid pay-per-view, which we'll get into in a minute, but I was so excited to see that. And just seeing the caption of "It's a cold day in hell" just really sold it for me. I was absolutely ecstatic. I kind of wished I could see Tony Khan's face at that moment, but we'll get into that later. And all I can say is, I think that Young Bucks victory lap is over.
Oof.
Ooh, man.
And the Young Bucks victory lap definitely did not age well. And over social media, there was about 71 million views in the span of 2 days after CM Punk made his return. So a quite viral moment, and a moment that a lot of people were waiting on after his return is what he would have to say on Monday Night Raw. And what I found the funniest thing is WWE milked that thing the entire 3 hours. They told you, oh, you're going to hear from CM Punk with a live mic, but you got to watch this whole episode. You can't, every time, like at 9 o'clock, you thought they would be it. Nope. At 10 o'clock, you thought he would do it. Nope. It was like 10:50. They finally showed his locker room, and it was just like, yeah, they made us watch this whole 3 hours. Good on them for that. But
they know how to do it.
Yeah, that's how you got to do it. If you got CM Punk returning, man, you got to make sure, like, hey, let's make sure we get eyeballs on the entire show rather than just everybody leaving after the first promo or something like that. But when he actually did make his return, a lot of people expected him to name drop a bunch of folks or throw a bunch of shots some type of way, and he really didn't do that. He really just made a lot of subtle references to a lot of folks in WWE. He made a subtle reference to the wise man, Paul Heyman, and the advice that he gave him before he left. He made references to, Cody's dad, Dusty Rhodes, a promo that he once did before. He said an American Dream once said that, if it's the truth, then, dang, I forgot what the exact quote was, man. I wish I knew that off the top of my head, but I know he made a reference to the American Dream. And he also said that, hey, everyone loved seeing me back except a few folks. And, of course, that's in reference to not only, Drew McIntyre possibly storming off before CM Punk even made his return, but when CM Punk made his return, Seth Rollins, after the cameras were off and once the pay-per-view was over, was seen throwing up middle fingers to CM Punk. He was cursing at him, throwing a bunch of F-bombs. At first I thought it possibly could be, a shoot, but then I realized it's Michael Cole holding him back. If he was really that upset, I don't think Michael Cole by himself would be able to hold him back that much. So I think it was possibly a work about a possible future program that him and CM Punk are going to do. But CM Punk even made reference to that, all very subtly and all within the span of about 7 minutes. But the most important thing he said and the most hype thing he said was, I'm home. And that got the fans going crazy up there at Monday Night Raw. And, he also said at the very end of the promo, without the mic in his hand, right before he went off camera, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make money. And I think that pretty much shows where his eyes are. He may not love being back in WWE, but he knows the type of money that is to be made. But how did you feel, Rodney, about his return promo on Raw?
I ain't gonna lie, man. I was expecting Raw to open up with CM Punk, but but I think it was a smart idea to wait until the end, because for a lot of people, if you show CM Punk at the beginning, they're gonna just say peace out towards the end of the show. So they made the fans, watch, the entire show before waiting until the end for CM Punk, which I think that's a good business move, but I think after the promo that CM Punk had towards the end of the show, my suggestion is that, my thing is, oh my goodness, I hope he doesn't cause any commotions like he did, the first time he left WWE, and then also, with AEW, of course, with Jack Perry, Jungle Boy for the AEW fans, and obviously, of course, the Young Bucks. So I hope he doesn't make the same mistake that he did. And, of course, you might ask in a little bit, there are about maybe 3 or 4 guys in the WWE right now that I want CM Punk to have a program with. And and I will say those guys, in a minute. But I just hope that CM Punk doesn't make the same mistake that he did, with AEW, and that he doesn't cause too much problems. Because I think I heard something from a source that WWE has in his contract to no disciplinary or don't cause no commotions or anything like that. Don't start no beef in the back. So could we get a more kinder CM Punk, or are we going to see the CM Punk that causes commotions backstage?
Yeah, I think one of the important thing to remember is even if there is some like discomfort or commotions backstage, I think WWE does a much better job at keeping it in house than AEW did. I think
Right.
there's certain people in AEW that if they had a problem with somebody, they had no issues telling the dirt sheets about it and making it known to a lot of the public, even if it wasn't the entire truth being told to them.
Right.
But I think that it's smart that they put kind of a disciplinary, clause in his contract. And, of course, CM Punk, he's an older guy. He knows where he is. He knows about his reputation. So I think he understands this is probably going to be his last shot. And if there's some type of commotion or if there's some type of like disagreement or if he gets into another fight, then he's likely done in the wrestling industry as a whole. But
Right.
Noah, what is your thoughts on the return promo?
Um, I'm gonna start with the fact that I think not mentioning AEW is kind of masterful because that was what everybody was expecting, right?
Right.
Everybody was expecting him to shoot on the Young Bucks, to shoot on Tony Khan, but he didn't do that. He made it seem like nothing in the old company mattered. He made it seem like everything that he did in AEW didn't matter, which I'm pretty sure, considering the egos of the elite, they are not happy about CM Punk not shooting them, not spouting off at the mouth about the elite and all the guys in the AEW locker room who don't like him. And it also gives credence to all those guys who are former WWE guys or guys who want to go into the WWE from AEW. It shows that they've got a good shot of getting in if they're CM Punk guys or if they're Triple H guys
Or Cody guys?
or Cody guys.
Right.
Um, so I feel like that was a great idea to not really start off with all the shooting and everything like that. And as far as the Seth Rollins thing, I did hear reports that the first thing he did when he got back to gorilla position was try and see if he could find Triple H to set up a program with CM Punk,
Mm.
Mm.
which is like, I know in the past he said a lot of things about CM Punk, but I feel like that was to try and egg him on to get into a program with him because I mean they might have had some disagreements, but he has admitted in the past that the Shield would not have happened without CM Punk.
Yeah, and I think this whole even before he came back to the company, Seth Rollins, he'd kind of been like whenever he's asked about CM Punk, I remember he like said just plainly, I don't like the guy. He's a jerk, he's a prick. He can stay away from WWE. And there's probably some real feelings there, but I also think even in that moment when the brawl out initially happened, he kind of saw like, hey, this AEW thing may be going a bit more south. So let me go ahead and try to work a little bit, see if, if he does make his return, see if they can't set that thing up between us two, because it's probably a program that WWE would have had in mind for CM Punk anyways to get him with Seth Rollins. They kind of are like they kind of seem like a good pairing with each other. So I guess one of the last things we'll go into before we go into the Survivor Series is what do y'all think will happen now that CM Punk is officially back? What do you think his next, at least I'll say up until WrestleMania season, what do you think his next few feuds are looking like? Is it just going to be one continuous feud through WrestleMania? So Noah, I think you said that you think it's going to be Seth Rollins up next, right, for possibly Royal Rumble?
Yeah, I could imagine that being the case, especially since he is the world heavyweight champion right now. And one of the biggest ways to really crown CM Punk as being back is probably putting a belt on him.
Mm.
Mm.
And as of right now, I probably don't think he's going to go for the Royal Rumble, although there are reports that that they want to put him against Roman, which would also be great. But I think they need to finish the story first before that happens. Um, so as of right now, I'm still thinking it's Seth Rollins at least until WrestleMania, and either he wins the Royal Rumble and chooses Seth, or he gets put in the Elimination Chamber and he gets put up against Seth, because we already know that if he doesn't win the Royal Rumble, Cody probably will, and he will definitely choose Roman.
Mm-hmm.
So that means Cody goes after Roman, and CM Punk gets that shot at Seth Rollins, and you can get it in 1 year. He main events at WrestleMania, which is what he always wanted, anyways.
Yeah, for sure. I have somewhat similar feelings to you, Noah, although a bit different. I do think that CM Punk's next feud should be Seth Rollins. However, if I were to kind of just map it out and just fantasy book it for the next about 3 months, I would do this. I would have CM Punk beat Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship at Royal Rumble. In the Rumble, instead of having Cody win, I'd actually have Gunther win. And then after a rematch in the next pay-per-view with Punk and Rollins, I'd have Punk win that, so he'd have one successful defense. And then for WrestleMania, you could have Gunther challenge CM Punk for that World Heavyweight Championship, and it'll be Gunther versus CM Punk. It's a bit out of the box, out of the ordinary of what you may expect, but it's also something that is certainly worth a WrestleMania main event. And honestly, if you don't want to, you don't even have to have Gunther drop the IC title. You could have him, still be the champion and just going after, he wants to have 2 belts now. Or you can have him drop it to someone else if you must. I'm not opposed to that, but if it was me trying to book CM Punk for the next few months, I would book it to where he wins a world championship, and it also sets up Gunther for the future, because CM Punk is a dude that's going to generate a lot of interest in the wrestling world, even by casual fans. So if you want to introduce Gunther to casual fans, have him beat CM Punk at WrestleMania, put him over, and then set him up as the World Heavyweight Championship, and he can carry that thing on for at least throughout the rest of the year. But Rodney, before we get in the Survivor Series, what do you think will happen with CM Punk at least through WrestleMania season this year?
Well, obviously, I think the best thing to do is keep Rollins to WrestleMania. I think the biggest thing that should happen is we got to save Rollins and Punk for WrestleMania. I think that's the number one thing. That's the number one program. Obviously, it's going to happen. There's no discussion on if CM Punk and Seth Rollins will happen. It's a matter of when is it going to happen. I think the best thing to do is going into the Royal Rumble, CM Punk enters the Royal Rumble, but instead of winning it, he would probably finish like maybe second and get thrown out by the winner. And I also will agree that I think Gunther should be the one to win the Royal Rumble, since he came oh so close last year against Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes doesn't need to win the Royal Rumble again to finish the story. He can still finish the story without having to win the Royal Rumble. So I would probably have Gunther win the Royal Rumble, and then I'll have him challenge the World Heavyweight title, because we're going to have Cody Rhodes go after the Universal title against Roman and finish the story, and hopefully, by the grace of God, at Philadelphia next year, beat Roman Reigns like he should have this year. But I think with CM Punk, I think how we should do it is Gunther win the Royal Rumble. He goes and challenges Seth Rollins for the title, but then CM Punk is like, no. You're not going to do that. And then instead of having one-on-one, I think what will make it even spectacular, not only get CM Punk in the main event, but also get the casual fans into Gunther, is a triple threat match. So for the triple threat match for the World Heavyweight title, you have CM Punk versus Gunther versus Seth Rollins. And I think to get more and more heat onto Gunther, you have Gunther pin CM Punk to win the world title. So CM Punk puts over Gunther, And you still have Seth Rollins, who still looks strong and doesn't have to eat the pin to lose the World Heavyweight title. And then in regards to Seth Rollins, obviously that's number one. Now, just like when CM Punk first went to AEW, he had his match with Darby Allin
yeah.
to sort of get that, Darby Allin over with the casual fans. So now I think as far as sort of doing the same thing right now, I think what you should do is have a younger guy go up against CM Punk and try to get that, that
Ring rest, possibly,
and then see, how CM Punk does. I think as of right now, I think the best person right now, a young guy or sort of a mid-card guy that you could have CM Punk go up against, Chad Gable. Chad Gable, who did lose against Gunther, but put up a strong fight against Gunther. I think he'll probably be a good guy that's a mid-carder that could sort of get that match with CM Punk, and that's going to raise his stock a lot, because I think if you have Chad Gable in a one-on-one match with CM Punk, get that rub from a main event caliber player, that's going to make him even more believable. And if they do decide to have Chad Gable beat Gunther for the Intercontinental title.
Okay, there. Rodney's dropping a lot of gems there. I did like that idea when you initially stated like who CM Punk should wrestle first to kind of like, get him back in WWE a bit. Chad Gable is one of the first people I thought of. He is a babyface. If you wanted a heel for that, I think Austin Theory would probably be the best thing. Do a quick promo against him, have CM Punk go out there, verbally, get him on the mic, and then he can go inside and they could probably have a solid match in the ring as well. But CM Punk coming back to WWE, some big things going on, and one of the things I love is the fact that there's a lot of options for the Royal Rumble now, and we'll certainly get into that as Rumble time comes along. But first, we are gonna get into Survivor Series 2023. There were only 5 matches on the card in total, and just overall, my thoughts on the event before we get into all the matches is, don't you guys want some ruffles? I mean, gosh, like, didn't it make you guys want to do the ruffle shuffle and all the product placement, man? Just the first frame was Michael Cole and Corey Graves with 2 bags of ruffles staring you right in the face, and that should have told you how this whole event was going to be. But in total, though, I will say it was okay. The returns were really what this pay-per-view were really set up for, especially because there's only like 5 matches in it. But just overall, before we get into all the matches, just like, what are your overall feelings on Survivor Series? Rodney, you can go first.
Obviously, I think Survivor Series was a good show, especially, having 2 matches, having the big selling match of the pay-per-view, War Games, in William Regal's tone. But, War Games, both matches, the man and the woman, was solid. Now, of course, we're going to get to that in a second, but I'm going to give my early thoughts. Both matches were solid, and obviously what I said was going to happen in the men's War Games is Damian Priest was going to try to cash in his Money in the Bank, but Randy Orton came in literally at the last second before, he could really cash in and maybe have an upset win against Seth Rollins, but Randy Orton put a stop to that. And then obviously Gunther, being the dominant, wrestler that he is, beat, The Miz. I mean, Gunther, and this is not really a hot take, because I think a lot of people will agree with me. In his one reign over, already surpassed Honky Tonk Man's record and whatnot, you can make a strong argument Gunther is the best Intercontinental Champion of all time. Like, of course, the main people you're going to mention is, you're going to mention your Shawn Michaels. You're going to mention your Bret Harts. You're going to mention your Chris Jericho.
Them IC champions in the 80s were no joke, man.
Yeah, you're going to mention your Macho Mans. You're going to mention,
Ultimate Warrior.
Ultimate Warrior, but with his
Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Yep.
Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, yeah, but if you're going off of just one reign, one guy, if you're going to have someone that he has good promos, great freaking matches, and he is believable It's Gunther. Name me one match from the Ultimate Warrior, who is not a great wrestler. Somebody like, give me a match from Mr. Perfect. Give me a match from Shawn Michaels besides the ladder match against Razor Ramon that could top any of Gunther's big money match intercontinental title matches. Give me a match that's better than the triple threat against Sheamus and Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania. Give me a match that could compare against freaking Sheamus at, what was it, Clash of the Castle. Give me a freaking match that was better than Chad Gable on Monday Night Raw. Give me any match from all those guys from the 80s and the 90s that could compare to anything that Gunther has done. I'm telling you right now, Gunther is the greatest intercontinental champion of all time. And there's really, in my opinion, no argument for that.
Okay. Well, look, we'll definitely get more so into Gunther and that argument as we get into Gunther's match. Noah, before we talk about the women's War Games match, man, did Survivor Series, man, how did you feel about it? Did it make you want to do the ruffle shuffle? Did it make you want to go out there and get a pack of Slim Jims? How do you feel about Survivor Series 2023?
Overall, it was a very solid pay-per-view. I feel like the weakest match on the card was probably Dragon Lee and Santos Escobar, but we'll get into that in a minute. But overall, though, I think it's a really solid pay-per-view. There really wasn't any bad match on the pay-per-view. Maybe some were weaker than others. But overall, great pay-per-view. A lot of fun things going down. Really setting up for Royal Rumble, which is what Backstage has kind of said is how the next 2 months are going to roll down, is how they're going to be setting up for Royal Rumble. So as far as Survivor Series War Games 2023 is concerned, I'd say it's a 4 out of 5.
All right, awesome, Noah. Well, hey, let's go ahead and get into it. The first match of the night was the Women's War Games match with Team Bianca. That's Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair, Shotzi, and Becky Lynch versus Damage Control, which consists of Bayley, Asuka, Io Sky, and Kairi Sane, and Dakota Kai, who was on the side outside of the cage, assisting Damage Control throughout the match. And the one takeaway I have here, man, is Bayley is the real MVP of Damage Control. She started off the match first. Her and Becky worked a really good first 5 minutes. And as the match kind of got to its close, she saved everyone from getting a pin or submission. When Charlotte had Io Sky in her figure 8 lock, it was Bayley who dropped the elbow drop on her. When Becky Lynch had Kairi Sane in her disarmor, it was Bayley that broke that up. Bayley ate a spear that Asuka, I believe, was supposed to get as well, and then she ultimately went through the table and got the loss. So overall, the match itself, it was a solid match to me. Some of my favorite spots were, of course, the crowd-pleasing spot when Io Sky put the trash can over her head and dove from the top of the cage. Like, that's the type of, it was a bit ridiculous, but those are the type of ridiculous spots that you do in that type of crowd to really get them to endear on your side. The moonsault from Charlotte, I will give her credit. This moonsault looked good. It helped that there was actually a crowd of people there, not just one person she had to land on, but the moonsault looked good. And of course, it was the moment with Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair hugging each other mid-match. Of course, they've had some issues in ring and even in backstage as well in the past, so seeing them hug each other was a solid sight, if you knew the history those two kind of had. And overall, the good guys get the win. Team Bianca ends up beating Damage Control, and even though Bayley did all that work and took all those finishers and she ended up going through a table and getting the pin, I think that's going to cause Damage Control to kind of look at her sideways, despite all the work that Bailey put in. And yeah, man, what do you guys think about the Women's War Games match? How did you guys like it, and what impressions did you guys get from it? Rodney, we'll start with you.
So obviously, going into the match, I figured that Team Damage Control was going to lose, and Bailey was probably going to be the one that's going to eat the pin. So here's what I think is going to happen. Obviously, Damage Control is going to be mad at Bailey. They're going to blame the match on her, even though she was the saving grace of the team.
Exactly.
So I think with Damage Control, I think a lot of people I've been hearing wants Bailey the turn back face. Like I don't know if they want her to go back to the happy Bailey, the hugging Bailey and whatnot, but they want to at least see a Bailey face turn. Mm-hmm. And I think to solidify Bailey as a face turn is definitely Damage Control, attack Bailey, take her out of the group, and obviously you're going to have Kairi Sane, Asuka, and the champ Io Sky hurt her and whatnot. So they're going to have their own groups on themselves. Because remember, I did say not too long ago that with Kairi Sane back, they're probably going to find a way to get put Bailey out of the group and then have those guys together. So I think with this SmackDown coming up, I think they're going to find a way to take Bailey out of the group and then really have Bailey as a face. And I think that's what people have been, clamoring for, because Bailey's been a heel for, 3-4 years?
What, hasn't it been since like 2019, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I think 2019 was the year that she really turned heel. Yeah. She cut some of her hair, and then she started have a sort of darker look and whatnot.
She got rid of the wacky waving inflatable tube man.
Yeah, so I think now it's been long enough as a heel, very successful as a heel, but she sort of lost that edge that she had. So I think to get her back to where she used to be and whatnot, have her turn face, then have all of Damage Control beat up Bailey, and I think all the fans are going to care more about Bailey because all the work that she put in that match, and then Damage Control is going to say forget that and take out Bailey.
Yeah, and this match did a really good job at setting up that storyline. You even heard the commentators reference just how much Bailey was doing throughout the match. So if a face turn is definitely, it's about that time. Bailey needed that heel turn back in 2019. Her character wasn't really going too much places, and that feud she had with Alexa Bliss kind of put the nail in that coffin. That was not a good look for her way back in those days, but that heel turn, despite how on the fence I was about it, ended up being the best thing she could have did for her career. But now it's about time for her to kind of be a babyface again, find a new part of her character as Bailey, and this match definitely did that job. Showed that despite how it may look or sound as her being a leader, she can make those actions that leaders do. She can take the hits that her teammates won't take, or that her teammates will end up losing the match because of. But of course, she did end up taking the pin, and that gives the Asuka, Io Sky, and Kairi Sane the perfect excuse to turn on Bailey for losing that match technically. But Noah, how did you feel about this match, and overall, what do you think is the future outlook for these teams?
Honestly, I'm in agreement with you guys. Overall, solid match. Awesome moment with Io Sky in the trash can. And I mean, I would like to have seen Damage Control take the win, not just because I'm an Asuka fan, or I do think that her joining Damage Control hasn't really had an effect yet. So that heel turn's going to have to make a bit more sense. Maybe it's her taking control of the group from Bailey. So if that's the case, then fine. I'm fine with that. And it does give Bailey that shot to turn face again. So, but yeah, overall, solid match. Charlotte looked better. Becky's still doing really good. Um, Still think Bianca should turn heel sometime soon, especially if Bailey turns face. Um, but other than that, really not much else to say.
Yeah, yeah, solid match overall. Although I am still somewhat against the concept of having two War Games matches in the same night, but overall, I did like this match, and I don't think that that philosophy really can't impacted this one too much. I think it impacted the second one a little bit, but as far as the first match goes, I thought it was a solid match and it told the story that it needed to tell. But the second match of the night would be Gunther and The Miz, if I'm not mistaken. Gunther versus The Miz for the Intercontinental Championship. This one went about 12 minutes long, and basically, the story with this match this whole few weeks has been Gunther not really taking The Miz seriously. He keeps calling him a sports entertainer. He said that, the era The Miz represents is a bad era of WWE, and it's not what Gunther wants to represent. And, he's even made references to Ultimate Warrior and the guys of the 80s like Macho Man, who, he said they were showmen and that they really aren't at the level that Gunther is in the ring, like Rodney was saying. And this match in total, the story it told was The Miz just wanted to really be proven or taken seriously by Gunther, and a lot of it was Gunther being a little bit more overwhelmed by The Miz than he initially expected. Miz did a good job of attacking Gunther's legs, and even though Gunther had control of the match for majority of it, The Miz definitely did not back away at all. He pulled out a lot of dirty tricks that The Miz is apt to do, exposing the corner of the turnbuckle. He low blowed Gunther twice to try to get the win, but ultimately Gunther ended up putting him in a nasty Boston Crab, ended up getting the win. The man who has no finishers got the win once again with a simple Boston Crab that looked very devastating and looked like it hurt a lot. So overall, the match made sense. Wasn't like, one of Gunther's top tier matches, but one thing I like about him is just like you can tell there's some type of psychology being worked in every single one of his matches. Even if it's not going to be a 5-star classic, it's going to tell a story of some kind. And in 12 minutes, that's what they went out there and did. So a good match for Gunther and The Miz. Two of the best modern IC title reigns, The Miz and Gunther have both had. But what do you guys think of this match? Noah, we'll start with you, and also you can actually have a rebuttal to Rodney's earlier claims as well and what he was mentioning too.
So, Rodney, I do completely agree with what you say. I do agree that Gunther is the best IC champion ever.
Yep.
But to play devil's advocate for one moment,
Oh
you
no.
said that there isn't one match that's anywhere near as good. I have to disagree with you because Macho Man versus Ricky Steamboat exists.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
WrestleMania 3, right?
Yes, sir.
Ooh.
Yeah, that one's ahead of his time for real. Like that's what I was thinking. I was just like, them 80s, like the IC title was really treated like a world title back in those days. I understand your claims though, Rodney. How did you like the match though, Noah? You thought it was a solid one?
Yeah. I have no problems with that match. I mean, I wouldn't have minded if it went longer if they wanted to do that. I mean, with how the psychology of the match of uh, the Miz kind of underestimating Gunther at the beginning a little bit, and then him taking it seriously, he starts taking it to Gunther a little better, who, despite like looking really believable, still sold that stuff, that offense really well. And in spite of Gunther still dominating the Miz, he still made Miz look like a solid competitor in 2023, considering how much his work rate has drastically slowed down. But overall, great match. the right guy won. And just to agree with your point there, Jerome, that Boston Crab looked absolutely devastating. It like the knee right on his face. It was, and Miz sold that like it was $1 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just the perfect finish for that match. And yes, it's not one of Gunther's best matches, but it's still a solid match and better than a lot of the matches that I've seen overall in a lot of years. Um, we have been spoiled for great matches ever since Gunther's been put on the main roster.
Yeah, for sure, man. And Rodney, how did you feel about this match with The Miz?
Obviously, I'm happy that Gunther is still the champ and, showing the world that the IC title is arguably the most important title. And I like that, he's still doing what he's doing with, Roman Reigns, not wrestling as much and whatnot on SmackDown. You got Gunther, who's the man, and freaking, treating the IC title like it's the world title himself. So I like that. So now the question is with Gunther, so he's beaten the Miz now. Look at the totality of opponents that Gunther had beaten. He's beaten Sheamus. He's beaten Drew McIntyre. He's beaten Chad Gable. And the list goes on and on and on and on. All the caliber guys that he had beaten for the IC title. So now the question is, how much longer is Gunther going to hold the IC title, and is there eventually going to be someone that's going to beat him for the title? And like I said, I think Chad Gable, if done right, I think Chad Gable should get another shot at the IC title, and this time eventually beats Chad Gable. And I think with that, if you do decide to have Chad Gable win the IC title, I think it should happen probably before WrestleMania. Because like I said, Gunther should be the one to win the Royal Rumble match. So you're going to have Gunther drop the IC title so he could really solely focus on the World Heavyweight title and try to take that title away from Seth Rollins. So I like the match, and The Miz, having a match against someone that's a prototypical pure pro wrestler compared to him being a sports entertainer and a superstar. I like the clash of pro wrestling and superstars, and obviously Gunther just kicking butt like he always do.
Yeah, Gunther's been doing this since he entered the main roster, has only faced one loss in a singles match since he has been on the main roster. That was, of course, against Chad Gable in a countout. But Gunther definitely is doing his thing, and we're definitely eager to see what else he has going for him in the future. These next couple of matches, however, kind of really didn't put a stamp on too much. Kind of just seemed like they were just there to get storylines moving along, and that's kind of why I'm just going to lump these two together a little bit. The first match, Santos Escobar defeated Dragon Lee in about 8 minutes, and then right after that, Rhea Ripley defeated Zoe Starks in about 9 minutes. And the real thing, well, first with the Santos Escobar match, that was supposed to be him versus Carlito, but apparently, I guess there was some kind of injury or something, or maybe there was a case where they didn't want to have the Carlito just have 7 minutes, so they just kind of put Dragon Lee out there without being announced. But I mean, these are two dudes that can go out there, have one of those flippy kind of acrobatic lucha matches that a lot of WWE fans don't really experience too often these days. And they just didn't really give it the proper amount of time for them to go out there and really put themselves over like that. So I guess when Carlito might have got injured, they were just like, okay, we still just need Santos to go out there, get a win. And they just had Dragon Lee out there to do the job. And that really was that match. A couple cool spots, a Hurricane Rana off of the apron to the floor, and then they were both on the top rope, and then Santos hit a Hurricane Rana off the top rope as well. But nothing really that'll stick too much. When it comes to Rhea, man, another mid to average match in this world women's title reign, in my opinion. And I want to like Zoe Starks a bit more, but it just seemed like this match once again a bit clunky for my liking. Once again, Rhea's presented like a star. She looks like a star. The fans treat her as such too, and it's really hard to try to build up someone as a baby face in the women's division when the biggest babyface in the women's division is Rhea Ripley, especially on Raw. But this match just didn't really do too much for me, if I'm going to be honest with you. Rhea ends up getting the win, and she continues her title reign. And, here's hoping that she has better feuds coming along or better matches coming along, because at some point it's going to get to a point where the common denominator between all these matches and Rhea's title reign is Rhea Ripley, and we may have to start having a discussion about how good is she in the ring. But overall, when it comes to just these two matches, Rodney, how did you feel about Santos versus Dragon Lee and then Rhea Ripley versus Zoe Starks?
Obviously, with a lot of people, they really didn't care much about those two matches. They really only cared about the other three matches. So with Santos Escobar beating Dragon Lee, I think, with Santos Escobar, maybe this is going to lead to him really, really having, a good heel run, and probably eventually have a match with Carlito, in the meantime, and then build him up to when Rey Mysterio returns. He's going to, have a match with Rey and maybe be treated more serious afterwards. And then obviously with Rhea Ripley and Zoe Stark, Rhea, things just haven't been the same ever since she won the title at WrestleMania. Like, she's had a lot of mid to average matches ever since winning the title. And it's like, man, she had so much, gravitas and everything when she won the title, beating Charlotte. So I was like, yeah, Rhea's going to have a great reign. And her reign, if you look at the quality of matches she's been having, her best match was one of her first title defenses against Selena Vega at Backlash.
That match was just way too short. It went like 7 minutes.
And that was probably her best defense. The crowd obviously played a big part in that. Selena Vega, in her sort of country, Puerto Rico and whatnot. So that was one of her better short reigns and one of her freaking best matches, and that's just sad. So I hope things pick up. Maybe are you going to eventually have Nia Jax in a one-on-one match with Rhea Ripley?
It kind of has to. It's looking toward that way. I thought they'd send Nia Jax right after her, but they've decided to build up Nia a bit more slowly in her return. So I have to think that Nia Jax is going to soon become an opponent for Rhea Ripley, especially seeing as they just had her beat Raquel Rodriguez. So they're kind of setting that one up. But, look, if you can't have a good match with the mid-level superstars on the roster, if every time we have a match we have to say like, well, just wait until they go up against Charlotte or Bianca or Becky Lynch or Bayley, like if you need to face a top star to have good matches, I don't like that. That kind of says some bad things about you. That kind of says like, okay, maybe you're not as good by yourself as you can be, because Becky Lynch, man, she went to NXT and she had like bangers with just NXT folks. And even in that feud with Trish Stratus that a lot of folks think went too long, at least it ended with that steel cage match at Fastlane, which was excellent. So, right now, Rhea Ripley, I'm hoping she can put through some quality matches, but it's looking like, hey, maybe we should go ahead and have her drop this thing to Becky Lynch at some point. But Noah, how do you feel about these two matches, Escobar and Dragon Lee, and Rhea Ripley versus Zoe Starks? How'd you feel about them?
I'll start with Escobar versus Dragon Lee. I wasn't a huge fan of this one, not because the wrestling and the match itself weren't good. I just feel like the build-up could have been much better, especially since Dragon Lee, they've been really putting him over on commentary lately, and he's been having a lot of great showcase matches on free television. So with them just kind of, it felt like he was kind of being jobbed out to Santos, which is bad considering they're trying to build up Dragon Lee as the next big luchador babyface on the roster, especially with the LWO as we know it kind of ending. I mean, Santos was Ray's top guy, and now with this heel turn, I get that they had to have Santos win to solidify that, and it's not the worst thing in the world, but I would like to see a bit better from that from here on out. Maybe give Dragon Lee a few wins in an actual program, and maybe give Santos an actual program.
Yeah, I think they're gonna give Santos a program. Like they're setting that up with Carlito. I just think right now, like for whatever reason, they just didn't want to do the match at Survivor Series,
which is weird considering it's a Big Four pay-per-view. But it would, and I should have probably gone over this at the beginning. This is one of the Big Four pay-per-views, but there was only 5 matches on the card, and these 2 matches could have gone for a lot longer, and maybe we could have had a bit more to sink our teeth into, especially Rhea versus Zoe, which I'll get to in a second. But with that match overall, that one felt kind of like a bathroom break kind of match, which sucks because they're both great luchadors, and I want to see that style really get over on WWE because I don't want to have to go to AEW for my luchador stuff because those are the only really solid matches on their cards these days. But yeah, 3 out of 5 for that one. Zoe versus Rhea. I feel like a lot of the problems with Rhea Ripley's title reign lately is that she is so attached to the Judgment Day and all the things that they're doing that her individual feuds with the women on the roster suffer because they can't do promo battles. They can't sell these matches. And when they do finally get into the match, they don't really give it enough time to matter, it feels like. Because I feel like if they were given a bit more time, we would have probably seen the crowd get into Rhea versus Zoe a bit more. And it gives them a better shot to showcase their talents, because the other problem with Rhea these days is that she doesn't really wrestle on free television anymore, and she doesn't have the presence of Roman Reigns, so she can't get away with that. People kind of need to be reminded every now and again of how great she is in the ring and not just on the mic. But again, the big problem is they have her so attached to Judgment Day that her stuff as a single star takes a massive backseat, which I feel like is really doing a disservice to her in-ring work.
Yeah, very good point there. And, I think she's done a good job when it comes to just Judgment Day type of things. And the Judgment Day have definitely gotten over as the main heel team in Raw. But just like you said, in terms of her feuds, when it comes to just, singles against women of the roster, just hasn't really held up, up to the mark that, Rhea Ripley can hit. So we'll see how it turns out. She's probably not dropping that title anytime soon, however. But moving on to the main event, which had Rhea Ripley's team in it, it was the Judgment Day. Damian Priest, Finn Balor, Dom Mysterio, JD McDonough, along with Drew McIntyre. And they went up against the team of Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, Jey Uso, Sami Zayn, and Randy Orton, who still had not shown up to the show up to that point. And that was the story they were kind of building throughout the whole show. Where is Randy Orton? Why isn't he here? Will he show up? Jey Uso assumed, hey, man, we did the stuff. We injured him when I was a part of the bloodline. He doesn't mess with me. He's probably not going to show up because of that. And, even when the match started, he still wasn't there. And when both cages emptied out throughout the entire match, Randy Orton still didn't show up. So that was the main storyline going into it. In terms of the match itself, I think this for me is when the War Games concept kind of started to wane a bit on me because, I understand the fact that, they want all 10 people in the ring before any pinfalls or submissions are able to get done. I understand they don't want to make it exactly like Elimination Chamber or anything like that. But what makes it take it away from me, what takes away some of the value for me is the fact that before everyone enters the ring, which takes like a good 20 minutes, 25 sometimes, like it's the fact that there's not much stakes. Nobody's going to get pinned. No one's going to get submitted. It's just dudes doing a bunch of stuff. And, if the wrestling is just like super duper, like high quality the entire time, that'll keep the crowd interested, then that's cool. But there were some dead periods in this match before Randy Orton made a return. I think pretty much throughout every single time everybody got in the ring, after about 2 minutes, the fans started chanting CM Punk. They started focusing on other stuff. The only time the fans had full focus is for that 3 minutes when Sami Zayn first entered the ring. I felt like when Sami Zayn was in that ring, fans were fully engaged. They loved Sami Zayn, and they were fully into everything he was doing. The match itself, though, it was solid. In terms of just like memorable things, not so much spots, just things I remember is like Drew McIntyre throughout the match. He really wanted to get his hands on Jey Uso. That's what he said in the promo. And throughout the match, like when it first started, that's the main person he was looking at. He wanted to get in earlier, but Damian Priest said, yo, we got to follow the plan. This is the plan we made. We got to do it. And ultimately, the plan that ended up coming to fruition was when both cages emptied and the final member of Team Cody was supposed to come out. No one came out, and then you heard Rhea Ripley's music, and then she attempted to cash in that Money in the Bank briefcase on Seth Rollins right then and there while he was down. But right before the cash-in, you hear Randy Orton's music, and Randy Orton makes his triumphant return, and after that, it pretty much becomes the Randy show. He does his power bombs, and the match officially started. There was a confrontation with him and Jey Uso because, of course, Jey Uso injured him and whatnot. But he then RKO'd Dom Mysterio. They all did an individual DDT spot as well. And ultimately, once Randy Orton got in, the babyfaces took full control. And they ended up getting that win, and Randy Orton ended up helping them out a lot. So I know I talked a lot, but one of the things I will say is one mystery that didn't get solved. Why was Randy Orton late? Why did he not show up? Was he stuck in traffic? Was he just hanging in the back the whole time? Did he want to make a grand entrance? I think if you're going to do that whole storyline, you kind of have to pay it off in kayfabe. You got to tell us why he was late if you're going to do that whole thing. But overall, how do you guys feel about the men's War Game match? Rodney, we'll start with you.
So I think with the War Games match, the men's, I think you had a good way to end the match, with Randy Orton having that final RKO on JD McDonough when the guys threw him off the top of the cage into the RKO to win. I think what probably could have made it a little bit better is to have Randy Orton pin maybe Drew McIntyre, but I don't think he was going to eat the pin. I don't think Damian Priest was going to eat the pin. So obviously you got to have the weakest link, which is obviously JD McDonough. No disrespect to him, but it's good that how Randy Orton finished the match and whatnot. That was good look for the match. Yeah, you could have probably had Randy Orton come in sooner than he actually did. But then the thing is, would it have had the same?
He wouldn't have got the pop.
It would. It probably wouldn't have gotten the pop it did when he came out. So I think that it was probably done right to have the crowd milk in until Randy Orton comes back and whatnot. And then of course we all thought that Randy Orton was of course, going to go after main event Jey Uso because, of course, the bloodline, taking him out in kayfabe and whatnot. But, Jay is not a part of, the bloodline no more. The bloodline is pretty much dead. And, of course, Randy wanted to go after them. But the bloodline, is pretty much not the same as it was when they took out Randy Orton. I mean, Sammy's not in the bloodline no more. Jay is out of the bloodline. Roman Reigns is not going to be here. And it's really only Jimmy and Solo. So you could pretty much say the bloodline is not as strong. The bloodline is pretty much dead because it's not as strong as it was when they took out Randy Orton.
I keep having to tell myself this isn't about the bloodline. This isn't about Roman. I'm gonna just let you slide on those claims.
Oh my gosh.
But one thing, before I let you go, Noah, I do gotta say this, man, because Damian Priest, you stink. P.U. Oh my goodness, man. Like every time this man tries to cash in, there's always something messing them up. And at this point, I don't know if I could take you seriously as a world champion, Damian. You looking bad. And the fact that Randy Orton picked you up and you just got crossroads and you had to eat that pin after you've been claiming you the leader of the Judgment Day. Disappointing, Damian Priest. You look really bad right now. You got to do some rehabilitation. You're still the Money in the Bank. So, hey, it's still possible for you to be a world champion. But even if you do get the belt, it's going to take some time before I treat you seriously. I don't know about the rest of these fans, but right now, your stock in the Judgment Day is about as low as it can be. That was Damian Priest, P.U. Yucky, my man. But Noah, how do you feel about the men's War Game match?
I gotta say, overall, it was solid. I definitely agree with you about Damian Priest. If they were gonna give him anything real to work with, they should have had him cash in and win by now. And if they were gonna treat it like this, they might as well have just given the briefcase to LA Knight like you and I wanted. However, still a great match. It was very cathartic to see Dominic Mysterio get hit with an RKO. The spot with JD McDonough in the RKO is also really good. And the draping DDT spot, I mean, how can you not enjoy that?
Yeah, it was Randy's comeback. It was the vibes. They all bought into the vibe of it. So I can't be mad at that one.
Yep. I mean, and I can't be mad at the entire vibe of this match. And when Randy showed up, it became the Randy Orton show.
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody who still likes Randy Orton's wrestling style, who still loves the kind of stories and matches that he can put on, I'm happy with how this went. And spot with Jey Uso kicking, I think it was Finn Balor in the face before he tried to get to Randy.
When Jey Uso and Randy were kind of like, looked like they were kind of getting into a bit of an argument. Randy Orton, he was about to do an RKO, but then he looked at Jey Uso and started thinking about RKOing him.
Right. Good solid spot, which led to a good backstage moment on Raw where he was like, yeah, man, as long as you're not with the bloodline anymore, we're cool. Cody looks really good. Jay still looks really fun. I wasn't with the Yeet stuff at first, but now I'm kind of getting into it.
Yeet.
This
Yeet.
this match this match kind of solidified it for me. Like, all right, this isn't actually as annoying as I think it is. Sammy still getting to do his thing was really cool. Kind of wish he got a little bit more of a showcase in this match since we haven't seen how great he's been in a while. And Finn got a little bit of offense in. He still looks all right. Damian, I think, probably needs to start wrestling more matches overall to kind of remind people, hey, I'm still Mr. Money in the Bank. I'm still great at this wrestling thing. And then JD McDonough just taking all of these L's.
He's the stooge, man. That's what they got. They don't want Finn Balor doing all the stooging. And Dominic Mysterio's right there, but he's an NXT champion. So, hey, they say, hey, JD, you're gonna take all the hits.
Yeah, I mean, Dom took a little bit though, which made the match between him and Randy on Raw the next night or on Monday night still really good. And the whole Daddy's Back promo was great.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed Randy's return promo as well, man. We didn't talk too much about that, but overall, you guys already said thought Survivor Series War Games 2023 was a solid pay-per-view. And the War Games match, although it wasn't like the grand spectacular thing, I think the points that needed to be made were made. Randy Orton's comeback, that was probably the most important thing in that match. And, that pretty much satisfied everyone watching. I think even if CM Punk didn't come back, we would probably still have positive feelings toward that match and the event as a whole. But overall, man, that was Survivor Series 2023, man, and a very memorable event. And there should be a lot of new things coming up, a lot of new stars in WWE who haven't been around or are just now returning. A lot of good stuff to look forward to, man. And Roman, you need to come on back one of these days because you got folks out here talking crazy. They talking crazy about you, Roman. So you got to make that come. You got to show folks why you the tribal chief again, even though you've been doing it for 3 years. But, hey, we're going to go ahead and end this episode of the BN'N podcast. Thank you all for listening on ATL Talks Radio. If you are listening on ATL Talks Radio, you can access the podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcast as well. Just search BN'N Podcast. If you're listening on one of those platforms, you can listen to us live on ATL Talks Radio. It's available on iHeartRadio or atltalksradio.com or atltalks.com rather. Thank you all for listening. Rodney, Noah, appreciate you guys for being here as always, and we will catch you guys later. Peace.
See ya.
See ya.
And boom. All right.
We didn't talk about our truth.
We did talk about our truth.